So I want to touch on a topic that I haven't talked about in a long time, but one that should not be foreign to YouTube because I believe that this platform may have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of videos made about Kathleen Kennedy and how she's ruined Star Wars. Let's be honest, it's been talked about to death and it's still being talked about because of what's going on lately with the Acolyte, which a lot of people don't like, and with the recent comments that Kennedy made. See, it had been a while since there was that much, talk coming out of Lucasfilm. It had been a while since Kennedy had actually said something that made her look like doesn't have a clue. And once again, recently, she brought up identity politics once again and talked about how Star Wars is male dominated, this, that, and the third. It's just the same thing over and over again. What I want to discuss, though, is it's going to be a much simpler video. I want to talk about the actual, because now it's literally been over 10 years now, and it's 9 years since The Force Awakens came out. But if you remember, if you go back to 2014, that's when we started hearing about The Force Awakens. I mean, we heard about it before then, but that's when rumors started to ramp up about casting, who was coming back, and the trailer. The first teaser was, I believe, on Thanksgiving Day of 2014. Well, it's 2024. And I can tell you that during that time period, I believe the entire Star Wars fandom was super hyped. The Disney purchase happened, and at the time, we didn't really know what Kennedy could do, but we knew that George was stepping down and that Kennedy was going to be taking over. George picked her to take over, and we knew that she was a competent producer. So at the time, I don't think people had any idea of what was going to happen. Fast forward now to 2024, Star Wars puts out a new show, and the hype is not there anymore. That must-see energy is not there anymore. And you can blame the writers, you can blame the Lucasfilm Story Group, you can blame a lot of people, but in reality, this problem needs to go to the top because the decision makers at the top are the ones that ultimately put the final stamp on this. And that is, of course, Kathleen Kennedy and even her boss, Bob Iger. Bob Iger himself has come out and stated that putting out so much Star Wars was a mistake and that he wants to scale it back, which the same thing happened with Marvel. They tried to put out too much Marvel at once, and they weren't really honing in on making quality shows and quality films, and that's why Phase 4 and 5 feel like such a step down from Phases 1, 2, and 3. This is something that happens, I think, to all franchises in time. The reality is that nothing lasts forever. And I'm going to give you a bit of a different perspective. I am not a fan of Kathy Kennedy as far as her being the boss of Lucasfilm. I don't think she's a very good leader when it comes to this particular IP. I don't think she is, and I think she's proven that with how Star Wars has been handled. I don't think people really remember that when it comes to box office, when it comes to overall finances, when it comes to just being a part of humanity, being a culturally significant franchise, Star Wars was at the top for many decades. Prior to the MCU, prior to Avatar coming out, prior to all these more recent things, you could make the argument that theatrically Star Wars was the big event movie. The original trilogy, later on the prequel trilogy, like it or not, it still felt like an event. And even when you go into the early days of the sequel trilogy, when all we had was Force Awakens and Rogue One, maybe less of an event, but it was still new Star Wars content, and if you remember, at the time, we were starved of it. There was Rebels and Clone Wars that helped fill the gaps, but not everybody watched those shows, and not everybody recognized that as being Star Wars because they're used to watching it on the big screen. Because Star Wars, to me, is something that has to be seen on the big screen. The audio effects, the audio engineering, the picture quality, that's a franchise, no matter what movie you see, that needs to be experienced because of how it is visually and audibly in the big screen. However, The reality is, folks, if you look at what Star Wars means right now compared to what it meant even 10 years ago, there's no hype right now. I reviewed The Acolyte. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. It was just kind of there. And then you have shows like Andor that get tons of critical acclaim, but a lot of the fans don't like it. Then you've got stuff like Ahsoka, which takes, two steps forward, but then one step back. Two steps forward, one step back. The Mandalorian, look, as much as people want to crap on Kathleen Kennedy, I'm going to give her credit because she at least was the one that put Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni in charge of The Mandalorian, and that turned out to be a very wise choice because they did a great job with that the first 2 seasons. We really did not see cracks in that armor until we get to the Book of Boba Fett and that series, but even that was not entirely Favreau and Filoni's fault. There was other people involved on that show. Then came Mando Season 3, Kenobi, and Ahsoka, which results may vary. Some of that stuff was great. Some of it was not so great. But we felt like there was, quote-unquote, a new hope, no pun intended, with the Mando series, but there doesn't seem to be that much hype anymore. I guess Season 3 just didn't connect with people, which I understand why. They kind of wasted a lot of time. And now we have the movie that's being worked on, which I think will probably do well. That's going to be a big test right there. Is the Star Wars brand dead? If that movie legitimately flops financially, then we've got a huge indicator that Disney has ran this thing to the ground. But you could make the argument now because there's just no hype. There's no excitement. There's not that sense of wonderment, that sense of excitement to see Jedi and dark side users clash. Fans just don't give a damn anymore, man. They don't care. And some of it has to do with the continuous blaming of the fans for the lack of success, saying the fans are chauvinist, saying the fans don't like strong female characters, saying this, saying that, continuously making it about politics. And look, I know that movies and franchises oftentimes are political in many ways and sometimes subtle ways, but it becomes annoying when you have the creator of a franchise that you grew up loving, that you want to be great, saying, no, it's not us, it's you. You're the problem. Think about that. It's not the fact that we can't write a story to save our lives. It's not the fact that we focus on the wrong things. Instead of creating great characters, we have this invisible checklist of things we have to check off to appease all these groups. It's not about that. And you know what's crazy? For as much as people on this platform hate the whole woke and anti-woke stuff, mostly the anti-woke hate the woke, and the woke, I don't know what they think, to be honest. But on YouTube, there's a lot of anti-woke sentiment. The reality is, if they told good stories, even if they have some of those politics in there, even if they continue to focus on, maybe emphasizing female Jedi more, or creating characters that aren't necessarily straight, or whatever their goals are, whatever that may be, right? The diversity thing. If they told good stories, people wouldn't be pointing the finger at this because it feels like that's their focus. And even if it's not their focus, whoever they have in there writing these stories, they need a serious creative overhaul of the Lucasfilm story group. I don't think Kennedy gives a damn. I think Kennedy's one of those executives that cares only about the bottom dollar. And I think we've gotten to the point now, which a lot of folks think Marvel's gotten to this point too, where we've gotten to the point where it feels like Kennedy does not care at all about what the fans think, and as long as whatever she puts out makes money, and as long as whatever she puts out, people gobble it up because they can't let go of their precious Star Wars, that she'll be okay. Even if they're making less money, or even if they lose a little bit of money, they can find ways to play with the money to, change the reports. This is capital, this is all business capitalism stuff, dude. It's not that hard to kind of tweak the system to make even flops look like successes. It's all about, office politics. So it feels like she doesn't care anymore. The fact that they're still making these same comments they made when Last Jedi came out, and these same exhaustive excuses blaming the fans, And the thing is, I'm not going to sit here and call for a boycott because that never works. But it feels like the only way that they're ever going to learn is if there is a catastrophic flop to where Iger says, okay, we are losing a lot of money. You're out. I'm replacing you. That's the only way that this could happen. And remember, Kathleen Kennedy has a lot of clout in that office. People on YouTube don't understand that she has a lot of clout with Disney. Like, she really does. And a lot of it has to do with her track record as far as being a part of some very successful movies. She's had a good career overall. And because of that, her track record protects her. That's how I feel about it. And the thing that's crazy is we've gotten to the point now. It's been years and people on YouTube talked about it. We have gotten to the point now where South Park, and this came out a few months ago, but South Park dedicated a whole episode, a whole special to Kathy Kennedy and the treatment of Star Wars. And here's the thing. When South Park gets to you, when South Park makes an episode about you and makes fun of you, that's when you know you've crossed over into a whole new realm, into the mainstream. You have to understand, people who follow these stories on YouTube, streamers, content creators, everybody from Star Wars Theory to guys like Darth Melvin, there's different degrees of like how much they hate this, but very few Star Wars fans that I see online like it. Now, with that being said, there are some that do, but you have to understand the South Park thing, this is now crossing over into people that watch South Park, that don't follow the news, that have no idea who Kennedy is, that don't, live and breathe by internet Star Wars news. People who have like regular day jobs who are just casual fans may have watched that episode and been like, oh, so that's what's wrong with Star Wars. You have to understand, I think I'm the only YouTuber that talks about this. We are a niche audience here on YouTube. I think as YouTube grows and as the fandom grows, and YouTube is a huge platform, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, but a lot of average people very rarely follow this stuff. Some will follow it like once in a while. They'll read an article or watch a video, but very few people are so tuned in than like the hardcore audience. So there's a lot of people out there that have no idea who Kathy Kennedy is. There's people out there who think that George Lucas is still creating this. And I know it seems like that's impossible, but no, trust me, there's people that just don't follow the news. But when they turn on South Park and South Park is going on, and going in on you, dude, that's when I don't see how. I mean, of course, I'm sure they, in the boardrooms, they were like, well, South Park trolled us. It'll give us attention, but don't worry about it, Kathy. We've got your back. Instead of saying, wow, this is now getting bigger and bigger and bigger, this elephant in the room. And instead of fixing the problem, instead, we're going to make it worse. And it is what it is. That's just, we're going to ignore it. We're going to stick our heads underground like an ostrich and just ignore it. And it's so frustrating because I grow tired of these companies blaming the fans, dude. You are not creating goodwill between you and the fans if you sit there and you blame the fans for things, man. It is the wrong thing to do, homie. And yet they continue to do it and not learn from it. Even if deep down inside, even if you actually believe the bullshit you're saying about fans being chauvinistic and fans not watching Star Wars as a strong women, which, by the way, is bullshit. There's a very, 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 very small number of fans that are actually sexist. You're always going to have people like that. It does not represent the majority of the fandom, even the ones that don't like the crap you're giving them. But you're shielding yourself from criticism by blaming it on them. They don't deserve to make a penny from us anymore, dude. They don't deserve it. They really don't. It's just, I hate it, man. I hate when companies do this. Instead of course correcting, well, we're Disney. We're super rich. We're never going to go out of business. They keep going with the same shit. And it's just, you would think that by now they would have learned their lesson, and clearly they have not. And it's so damn annoying, man. Bad leadership, man. That's what bad leadership does. Good leadership will figure out something to do and come up with a plan. Bad leadership doesn't. I don't think Kennedy gives a damn about Star Wars lore. I don't think she even understands it. I think she, like I said, probably a good producer, probably somebody who worked well with Spielberg and them, but I don't think she really understands Star Wars, which is why I'm glad she gave Filoni a promotion, right? But like, dude, just stop making public statements. All she has to say is, we're doing our best to make the fans happy. Even if you're not. That's it. That's it. But every time that you say this about the fans, it's bad. It's not just bad business. It's stupid business. It's horrible business. She should know better. And it just makes fans hate you more. Anyways, man, that's my little rant on Kennedy. I'm not going to be one of those guys on here that makes 10,000 videos about Kennedy. People have milked it to death, but I just can't believe it's 2024 and we're still in this, dude. Doomcock was making videos about her leaving Lucasfilm or getting fired in 2020. Maybe now people understand that this guy's full of shit, and maybe now people will understand that him going out there saying she's leaving, all that's going to do is going to make her, if she sees the video, say, you know what, now I'm not leaving, and we're stuck in this mess for even longer. But hey, people got to grift on here and make money. I'm not a hater. Do you, man? But I know he's full of shit. Anyways, take care. Have a good one.